So play, quite often play is misunderstood and it's thought of for very young children, and it's exceptionally important for very young children and is integral to all their learning. They learn through play. Play isn't a thing they do separate to learning. However, this Campus Lab project highlights as well that play doesn't stop when you start to grow up, and as adults we like to be playful. So when we were looking at our project and our brief, we were looking at children from our 4-year-olds right up to our 18-year-olds. When children learn through play, they can express themselves in many, many different ways, and it's also a way that they echo and reflect the world around them and experiment and explore without any constrictions or constraints on them at all. But as I say, that's as important for a 4-year-old as it is for a 24-year-old. So play is a key part of our growth and development. So some of the fundamental things for our Campus Lab, that our starting points were inclusivity. So we had to make sure that any play or recreational area was accessible to all of our students, no matter what their needs, and all of our adults as well, no matter what their needs. Aligned with our mission, sustainability was a key part of what we looked at, and also flexibility and adaptability. We want the play in recreational spaces to be exciting and new for a long, long time, to not be static, not be fixed. We want them to be changeable. We want the students to have ownership of changing them, moving them around. So that was a key part for us as well. We also wanted that sense of belonging for the students, so they have a voice. Once you put a fixed playground in or a fixed play space, that's already been decided. They have a voice as in how they use the space, but with the new areas that we were ideating, we really wanted them to be able to change things around. So it was really, really exciting. So we were very fortunate. We engaged feedback from our student councils, and we have a student council in primary school, a separate one in middle and a separate one in high. So on both campuses we got feedback and ideas and opinions from all of those students on the student councils. So at the moment on East, we've been very fortunate to leverage our learning on East. So last year we opened a fantastic play space for our primary school students, but that's also used by middle and high school students. And what's lovely about it is middle and high, or high and primary, will come together and use it together. We've done a lot of learning observing how the space is used. So that's really quite often different to what we thought. So we've leveraged that when we were thinking about the new campus, and that's why we talked about modular and flexibility and being able to change it. On East as well, we have some high school projects going on for their hangout zones, and the students themselves have requested developing recreational spaces where they don't use their phones. So old-fashioned arcade games, Zen spaces, creative spaces, they're developing in their hubs. So we leverage that with ours as well to make sure that we are looking at spaces for 4 to 18-year-olds. So we engaged many different constituents when we were gathering feedback to help inform our decisions and our choices. As spoken about, we engaged student feedback as the first feedback we got. So we had our primary, our middle and our high students give us feedback. We worked with many colleagues across the 2 campuses and asked for their experience both here and at other schools. You know, what have they had that works really well, what doesn't work really well. We were very fortunate to go and visit different schools in Singapore, and we chose schools that we knew had recently designed and built playgrounds and play areas and spaces, and so we got to experience their play spaces, but to have those conversations, what would you do differently? What has surprised you about how the space is used? What would you have more of? What would you have less of? So that has been really valuable. And we also went to visit many of the play spaces around, the public play spaces around Singapore, because Singapore has some fantastic recreational spaces and they really focus on children and adults. So for example, lots of the HDB developments will have a play area for young children. They'll have the exercise tracks and walking tracks for the elderly to make sure they keep fit and active and really have that health and well-being at the centre of what they do. So we were able to leverage all of that information while we were planning ours. And one of the key things, I think we thought in the beginning about this, but it became far more confirmed for us, that there needs to be multiple spaces of different sizes, so smaller spaces. We have some children who have sensory needs, so we need spaces that are smaller, that engage all 5 senses. Aromatherapy gardens, etc. would be an example. But also we need those large areas. Young children like to play, they like to play tag, they like to run around, they like to let off all that energy. So the variety of spaces, multiple spaces in different parts of the campus and of different sizes. But one of the key things as well that came across was the spaces could be used for different things. You don't want spaces that are used twice a day for break time and fully used at that time, not used at all during the rest of the day. So we have done some of this work on East as well with our outdoor learning and our forest schools approach. And so we have actually spaces that are used for learning during classroom time, if you'd want to call it that, so they're not just used at playtime. So actually spaces that can be used all the time and of different sizes with different purposes was something that came across loud and clear. We also looked at our adults. So for example, some schools we looked at have a walking track that's just made around the school or within the school or go around, and how people were using that in their lunch hour to get outside, get into the greenery, as well as stay healthy and exercise. And they talked about how that improved their own well-being. So that was a key part as well, because if our adults are all well, healthy and happy, our students will be well, healthy and happy.